It's time. I've made my decision. It's taken weeks, but I'm here. The Arizona Cardinals need to stick at 4 and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's discuss. But first, check out this super badass new intro.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner and Locked On AZ Cards. Follow the the whole show, YouTube. Search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're the audio type, leave a review if you'd like. You know that I'm just happy that you're here. Happy Monday. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So here's the thing. I've been creeping up towards this for a while with many roadblocks and wandering eyes and everything in between surrounding the topic of the number 4 overall pick. I took a couple podcasts off last week to discuss other things, what we know, what we don't know about the Arizona Cardinals currently. I'm going to do a mock draft. I did 2, actually. I'll do that in the final segment. And they're from the angle of what's really likely to happen and players that are likely to be there. I passed on players on purpose in the mock drafts because there's no way a couple players that are dropping in mock drafts are actually going to drop. It just ain't going to happen. I went 2 different routes, and I think that with this, clarity here, that the Cardinals should just stick in 4 and pick, it's easier to kind of look at what they should do for the rest of their picks. And there's a couple reasons why I've landed on this side of the aisle, and I'm not going to change. You've known every day that I've struggled with this. This isn't something that's like, oh, you're being contrarian. It's clickbait shot. That's not what I do here. Some may think it is because they don't like what I say sometimes, but that's fine. Drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. is the right move for a couple different reasons. And it's not just about 2024, obviously, but it's more so about what Monty Ossenfort has built and the opportunities he's given this organization for the next couple seasons that makes it more palatable to pass on a home run offer of trading back. And then there's, another little honorable mention, a reason why I've landed on this. First, the easy one. The Arizona Cardinals need young, talented players to be future pillars for this team. Okay, and that may sound basic and obvious. They haven't had a whole bunch of those. So again, what's made to look basic and obvious for most organizations in the NFL doesn't, translate or correlate or compare to the Cardinals. That's been infused with ineptitude for the last ever. There's been great moments. There's been great chunks of years where they've had double-digit wins and made deep playoff runs. One Super Bowl appearance, almost 20 years ago at this point. One NFC Championship game 10 years ago at this point almost. So living with the Uncle Rico looking back in the past is not something that's going to help satisfy the future. So calling it what it is, this has been a dysfunctional and inept franchise for the majority of its existence, and now there's the opportunity to completely remove the dictionary definition of what the Arizona Cardinals organization is. So regardless of what you think about Kyler Murray personally, they've got a franchise quarterback. They've got a running back. They've got their franchise right tackle who may move to the left. We'll see what happens in camp. They've got their franchise tight end. They've got their safeties. So while it's not everything, they still have needs. Left guard, interior defensive line, the linebackers altogether. The pass rush has been non-existent. And the cornerback room, they've got a couple, which is about average. There's no – say what you want about the Eagles and they're bringing in all the big names. How has that worked? Just because you bring in big names who make a lot of money doesn't mean it's going to mesh. This is how You have the hard reset, you start over, and you start to slowly but surely incrementally build a roster with young talent for sustained success. That's the goal. And the Cardinals have the ability to draft potentially the best player in the draft. Trevor Sikkema, one of my dear friends who's now, exploded, the lead draft analyst over at Pro Football Focus, he said, and you can check that interview out, I think it was a couple weeks ago at this point, he said Marvin Harrison Jr. may be the highest graded player he's ever graded regardless of position. I trust him. And I know that half of you watching are like, well, obviously, I've been saying this forever. And then after, like, no, they got to trade back. This has nothing to do with anything other than the Cardinals needing stars at key positions. So while if they did trade back, and I thought that was the right move for a while, and I've really done some soul searching here, that if they do trade back and they get 12, 23 in a future first, okay, sure. Or 11, 23 in a future first. Absolutely. I get it. And having a bird in the hand, kind of cliche, I hate using cliches on this lovely show. But you look at the roster construction right now. The fact that the Cardinals need everything still is actually a benefit to stick and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. And while that seems counterintuitive, just go with me here. It's better to know. It's better to have one more set and forget position than a couple. It's better, but still monitoring. And sure, this is all based on, future performance. We have no idea. He could be a bust. We have no idea about any of these players until you see it. But I'd have more solace watching this team on game day where it's like, all right, Kyler Murray, James Conner, Paris Johnson Jr., Trey McBride, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, Marvin Harrison Jr., set and forget. Don't worry. Don't even have to think about them performing every week. That's a lot better than, well, let's see if this rookie can, overtake the pass rush or be able to stop and stuff, be a run stuffer or a pocket collapser in the interior defensive line. Like, yes, all of those are important, maybe more important than wide receiver. But overcomplicating things at times doesn't give you the desired result. There's your Captain Obvious moment of the day. The bottom line is this. When you look at this roster, the Arizona Cardinals need everything. So why not take the best receiver prospect in the draft to pair up with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch and Trey McBride, who is still going to be wide receiver 1 in 2024, I'd assume, unless Marvin Harrison Jr. just comes out of the starting block and just goes nuts. And then that receiver room, including Trey McBride, is set. Then move on to the next. And while I've been screaming from the mountaintops, the interior defensive line, pass rush, and corner is more important, I still believe that. And if there was a bona fide, this is the best pass rusher in the draft, and this is the best corner we've seen in a long time, and the Cardinals could get those at 11 and 23, which would never happen because one of those players would not drop to 23, we'd be having a different conversation, but we're not. Marvin Harrison Jr., set and forget, make him an Arizona Cardinal, and move the hell on. There's a little wrinkle into why I've set on this that has nothing to do with the Arizona Cardinals, really, which is fun. And then another reason that I'm going to discuss next, Locked On Cardinals, your team, every single day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. So here's the thing. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Alex Lancey, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Free where you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Locked On NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern to hear what the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern, should be live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Woo! So I'm resigned happily to the decision that the Arizona Cardinals should just draft Marvin Harrison Jr. While all of the obvious reasons are there. Generational talent, transcendent. I really try to not use those terms because that's what everybody uses, and I think that's lazy. It's something that will benefit the Cardinals in the set and forget scenario. And the more set and forget positions you have on game day, the better you're going to be. And that's not to say they couldn't get studs at 11 and 23. And they'll have a future first. That's not to say that. But if it's close, stay. I don't think there's a world where filling holes, filling needs with potentially very good talent supersedes drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. I just don't. And now I'm putting it on the record. So before pivoting into, you know what? I'm going to do that one last. So there's another reason, and I mentioned this in the open, that Monty Osford has set up this ecosystem, this situation that will allow the Cardinals to pass on a massive trade up offer. What that is the other 5 picks in the top 90 and a full bevy of picks in 2025, accompanied by all of the money in circulation the Cardinals will be able to spend next year. And while building a roster and salary cap doesn't always coincide with, a dance that would put the Cardinals in perpetual relevancy, it doesn't hurt. And when it's utilized as a tool and not as a filling holes mechanism because they couldn't draft situation, it can be utilized a lot differently. It can go a lot longer. So say the Cardinals, and I'm going to give the third reason why, a little foreshadowing, it has to do with the actual draft package itself. The Cardinals have 27, 35, 66, 71, 90. And their picks next year. So if Monty Osford wanted to maximize more in the first round this year, he's got the ammo to do it. This isn't a team that's barren with picks. It isn't a team that's over the salary cap that's still trying to get under it. That's not this. So while the picks are awesome, as many first-round picks as you can get, do it, usually. Unless you're in this situation where you can be so calculated with what you want this roster to look like and where you want your strengths to be, that staying at 4 is so much more possible and palatable and a position of strength that the Cardinals are in a situation where they can do it. So the reason, besides the obvious ones, the reason behind drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., the two main, in the roots of the Arizona Cardinals Foundation and organization are, you got to set and forget guy at 4, and that's obvious. Okay, we know that. And they've got so many other picks elsewhere. And while, listen, none of this is new information, and I know that. But the way you angle it and look at it is you can take risk, trade back, trade up, do whatever you want in the next, second, third, fourth this year, and then first, second, third next year. This organization isn't going to be made whole this year. And I know that that's difficult for some fan, like, oh man, you got to go through another 5-win season. Maybe. Chances are probably not. The Cardinals were the most efficient offense, or top 3 most efficient offense, the last 4 weeks of last year when Kyler Murray came back. Drew Petzing is the unsung hero of this organization right now. So you add Marvin Harrison Jr., that means that defenses are going to have to be kept honest, maybe less stacked boxes, especially if they draft a running back to couple with James Conner, which you'll see in the mock draft that I did. There's an apple of my eye in that respect. Picking Marvin Harrison Jr. and leaning on the rest of the draft capital they have, not only for this season, but for next season, will allow Monty Ossenfort that even if the draft, packages almost irresistible, that almost is what differentiates teams with the capital the Cardinals have for the next 2 drafts and teams that don't. And I think that will be the deciding factor on drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, and the Cardinals inevitably doing it. So the second thing in this little, the honorable mention in this thing that has nothing to do with the Cardinals, really, I think Minnesota's starting to understand that they're going to have to give up 3 first-round picks to move up. And I think that they're starting to see that J.J. McCarthy may not be worth 3 first-round picks to move up. And while the initial idea was trading up to 23 with Houston to package those 2 plus to move up, I think that there's Quezzy's starting to figure out that the Cardinals aren't just going to give up number 4 overall for less than 3 first-round picks. And I don't think 3 first-round picks is necessarily on the table. And that's what has to be the baseline for Monty Ossenfort to consider moving back. I just don't think that that's going to be the option anymore. And there's one that, while we're on this topic, ain't no way the Cardinals are going to move back 2 spots with the Giants and watch the Chargers draft Marvin Harrison Jr. directly in front of them for a future, day 2 pick, for a second-round pick. Just no way. No way. If it's that close, you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think that's – I'm seeing a lot of mocks with that. It's like, you don't know this, or there's no way that happens. There's no way. Unless the Cardinals grade Malik Neighbors that much higher, and would have to be by a landslide, or Roma Dunze for that matter. And they just don't. They just don't. If the Cardinals trade back to 6, they could definitely trade back again. And I just don't see that happening. I don't see what Monty Ossenfort did last year being replicated. While a week ago, 10 days ago, I was discussing my ideal scenario. The Cardinals trade back to 11, then trade back up to 5 was what I put out on Twitter that, I know that's not going to happen, but I'm just saying that would be the ideal scenario. They trade back, get 11, 23 in a future first, and they use 11 and 23 and move right back up to 5 and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. That would be the most incredible scenario. It's not going to happen, but it would be the most incredible scenario. I then, soften that by saying the Cardinals move back to 11 and 23 and then package 11 and something else and move back up to 8 with Atlanta and draft the remaining wide receiver there. But I'm not trying to be profound here. I promise. I'm not, obviously I've been saying this I can't wait to see the comments. I know what the options have been, and I know that I've been on the other side. But I really thought about it this weekend, and I really thought, what is the best scenario with everything involved? The massive amount of salary cap space they're going to have next year, the bevy of picks they're going to have next year, including all their top ones, and all of the picks they have the remaining of this season, to go with 27, they have 27 still. And I was like, okay, so if they trade back, they'll get more picks. That's great. They have a lot of holes. They have a lot of issues everywhere. And then I'm like, you know what? Wouldn't it be awesome to just take the great player? Well, yeah, but then, they have so many other holes, and that's not the position they need most. Okay, sure. And wouldn't it be awesome to take the great player and just figure it out afterwards? And I keep going back to, even though I loathed him as a player because he was so selfish, it goes back to the Darko Milicic, Carmelo Anthony deal at the top of the draft, whatever, I can't remember what year it was, 2005, something like that, where Detroit took Darko Milicic because they had Tayshaun Prince and Rip Hamilton already. It's like, what? You just take the great player. You just take the guy who just won the national championship. That's kind of the situation. You take the great player and you figure it out after. And I think that especially, again, with the draft capital the Cardinals have and the money they have under the cap next year, there's almost nobody under contract next year besides rookies. It is a perfect situation to just take the great player and use the rest of your draft capital to fill out the roster. And that's why I've landed on this for you today. 2 mock drafts. They're fun. And I think that because I've now officially decided that Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 should be the choice, you can get kind of silly pants with the draft, but have it be under the guise of needs for the team. And I went 2 routes. I'll discuss them next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person. You guys think that? Every day, so you know that I am. Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. I mean, the play-in tournament's tomorrow. Good luck figuring out who's going to win the NBA championship this year. But FanDuel is your home for it. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, leave a like. You know the drill. Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Cardinals. Check out that mock draft in 2 days on the 17th. Yeah, it's fun. It's different, and some of the smartest minds out there. We all collectively, were drafting and trading and doing it. It was wild. It was awesome. So please do check that out on on the channels on your Fire Stick app and the 24/7 streaming channel for Locked On YouTube. Okay. So mock drafts with Marvin Harrison Jr. in mind at 4. I went 2 different ways here. And for the audio listeners only, I'll run these through if you're watching on YouTube, which everybody should because it's easier to watch. Even though, I'm not incredible to look at, it's easier to watch than listen sometimes. So that's kind of why I say that. So the first one, have Marvin Harrison Jr. going at 4. For both of these, I went with what I thought was actually going to happen on draft night. And for both of these drafts, there's a popular name that people are starting to recognize, Johnny Newton, interior defensive lineman out of Illinois. He was available in both of these drafts. Cooper DeJean was available in both of these drafts at 27. Ain't no way either of those 2 players going to be there. So I'm doing this more in a realistic way So for the first one, I had Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama at 27. I went Braden Fisk, interior defensive line at 35 because they do need interior defensive line help, coupled with Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones they brought in over the over free agency. And then in the third round, this is where it got a little different because the wide receiver group is deep. Okay, between the top of the draft and then midway through the third round, you're still going to be able to find some gems there. And I went with Jalen Polk out of Washington with the Cardinals' first third-round pick. Jalen Polk had 70 receptions, almost 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Okay, this dude would have been a household name even more if he didn't share a field with Roma Dunze. He was the second wide receiver on one of the most potent offenses we've seen in a long time in Washington. And if the Cardinals truly want to make wide receiver a strength, which is what they'd show by drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, why not double up with the bevy of picks and the depth and wide receiver position that the 2024 NFL draft provides? Why not? Because if both of those guys work out and Michael Wilson stays healthy and Trey McBride is still a stud and Greg Dortch can chop up offenses between the 20s or between the tackles, this offense could be an absolute powerhouse. Absolute power. So I went Jalen Polk at 66. Austin Booker, another popular guy. I believe he played at Minnesota and then transferred to Kansas. He's off the edge, and he's long. He's good in shallow pass protection. The Cardinals need pass rusher help, so I would draft as many pass rushers as they can in this draft. And then finally, Trey Benson, who is now the apple of my running back eye. Florida State. I spoke with Trevor Sikkema again, lead draft analyst over at Pro Football Focus, and this is his favorite running back of the draft. Bucky Irving is another name out of Oregon that is going in this area. He's a fantasy football dynasty darling, and he's a little bit smaller. Trey Benson is a house, and I think he'd be perfect to double up with James Conner. So Marvin Harrison Jr., Kool-Aid McKinstry, Braden Fisk out of Florida State, interior defensive line, Jalen Polk, wide receiver 2 for Washington with the top of the third round, Austin Booker, edge rusher, Kansas, and then Trey Benson, running back, Florida State with their 90th pick. Now, the second one that I did, first 2 picks are the same. I had Marvin Harrison Jr. and this one, Johnny Newton and Cooper DeJean were both available, and they're just not going to be there at 27. So to Kool-Aid McKinstry there, and then in the second round, I addressed the pass rusher position there, taking Chris Braswell, long edge rusher out of Alabama. And then this guy is somebody just to keep an eye on. I know it's not an absolute – well, the Cardinals' position of need is everywhere. It's everywhere. Off-ball linebacker kind of gives people PTSD because of what Steve Keim did with Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, just moving them, and Hassan Reddick as well, even though that wasn't their traditional position in college. Edgerrin Cooper, Texas A&M, he's potentially the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL draft this year. So if you're taking best player available, irrespective of position, that'd be the right move to take there. And then I reached for Trey Benson at 71. Pro Football Focus didn't like that. Great, but I still think that getting a running back in the third round is massive. And then finally, Cedric Van Pran, center out of Georgia. The Cardinals need interior offensive line help, even if he's backing up Jalti Froholt for a year. It doesn't matter. What the Cardinals passed on with Tyler Linderbaum at the top, or in the 20s of the draft where they traded for Marquise Brown because they had Rodney Hudson. How has that worked out? Cedric Van Pran's played a little bit left guard. You maybe pop him in there and then move him over if they don't extend Jalti Froholt. I mean, I think that interior offensive lineman for one of the best run and pass attacks that we've seen the last handful of years in Georgia could be a lot worse. Leave in the comments what you think. And listen, Marvin Harrison Jr. should be the pick for the Cardinals at 4. And with that, everything else is so fascinating for what they're going to do because they have all the picks and all the money in the next 2 drafts. All the picks and all the money. Take your star. And remember, like, again, the reason why I came to this realization was, one, take your star, take your set and forget. And while that's not profound, coupling that with the money and the picks that they're going to have over the next 2 drafts, coupling with Minnesota kind of understanding they're going to have to give up 3 first-round picks and them probably not wanting to do it, all infused together, got me to finally say out of my big dumb face, it should be Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, and the Cardinals should not trade back. Alex Hensey, Locked on Cardinals. Without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.